Good morning, I'm Andy Hodges. Now welcome to the public hearing webinar on the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill HB 4-2021. Getting all stakeholders involved. This webinar is brought to you by Zimpaper's TV network ZTN, the Parliament of Zimbabwe, in partnership with Bold Ads, a subsidiary of Zimpaper's Private Limited. Now, the Public Finance Amendment Bill seeks to align the Public Finance Management Act, or PFMA, to the Constitution, as well as strengthen parliamentary oversight over use of public funds to curb corruption. The purpose of this bill, according to the memorandum, is to amend the Public Finance Management Act, Chapter 22-19, so as to align it with the provisions of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, in particular Chapter 17 of the Constitution on principles of public finance management. Now, public hearings to discuss the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill were held from the 7th to the 11th of June 2021. Two teams composed of members from the Budget, Finance and Economic Development Committee and the Public Accounts Committee covered all of the 10 provinces in Zimbabwe. This is the final public hearing held virtually to discuss the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill HB 4-2021. And as to the physical hearings are now over, this will be your last opportunity to contribute on the amendment bill and get your thoughts and comments known. Therefore, this is your webinar. We want to hear from you. So please keep your questions and comments coming in via the Zoom chat, or please wave or raise your hand should you want to make a contribution, and I will definitely come to you. Now, joining us this morning to discuss the public on this webinar, of course, for this public hearing webinar on the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill HB 4-2021, we are joined by members from two parliamentary portfolio committees. The first, the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Budget, Finance and Economic Development, and the second, the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee on Public Accounts. I'd like to welcome my guests this morning, or rather your parliamentarians this morning. The de facto chairperson of today's public hearing will be Honourable Edwin Mushariwa. He's member of the Budget, Finance and Economic Development Committee of Parliament. We're also joined by Honourable Bertha Chikwama. She's member of, again, of the Public Accounts Committee. We're joined by Honourable Bramwell Bushu, member of the Public Accounts Committee. Honourable Ability M. Gandawa. He's also from the Budget, Finance and Economic Development Committee. And Temba Muliswa. He's member of the Public Accounts Committee, Honourable. And Pepekai Chivore, Director in the Zimbabwe Parliament's Budget Office. Welcome to you all and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're watching the public hearing webinar on the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill HB, a subsidiary of Zimpaper's Private Limited. Now, as I've said before, this is your hearing, so please make sure we hear your voice. Keep your questions and comments coming in via the Zoom chat, or please wave or raise your hand should you want to make a contribution, and I will come to you. Honourable Mushariwa, let me first come to you just to give us an overview of exactly what the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill HB 4-2021 is and what it contains. Like, why is it being amended? What are the major changes that are being proposed for citizens for them to comment on during this public hearing?
Thank you, Andy. Maybe let me start by just explaining to the viewers the reason why we do the public hearings. As you are aware, we as Parliament, we do our legislative duties. We are supposed to make laws, amend laws, and in that process, the Constitution allows us, Parliament, to consult all stakeholders so that we get the input from the stakeholders, so that we'll be in a position to come up with a bill or a law that benefit the country as a whole. The Public Finance Management Act, Chapter 22-19, has been in existence, and I think, as you rightly pointed out, we are supposed to align this act to the public finance management principles as enshrined in Chapter 17 of the Constitution. And this is the reason why the bill is coming in. It's coming in to ensure that we align our laws with the 2013 Constitution, specifically Chapter 17. And I think members will agree with me that public finance management is the key cornerstone of any country. And the way you manage your finance determines the success or failure of a nation. And hence, this bill that has actually come on board.
Mm-hmm. So the bill is quite far-ranging, isn't it? I mean, again, before we continue with the submissions from the general public, you went to all 10 provinces, all those hearings are done, and the response was very positive, Honourable.
No, indeed, we did the 10 provinces, and I want to thank the Zimbabweans for coming in numbers and also coming up with the quality submissions. This bill definitely goes a long way. And I'm actually glad in terms of the submission that we got from the public. They also help to make sure that we come with a very robust public finance management system that can actually help us.
Because this is just one amendment bill in a long range of the government trying to improve public finance management, isn't it? I mean, this is just the latest stage of that process.
That's true. It's actually one of the, like I said, it's a key legislation. And I think it actually helps in terms of accountability, in terms of transparency, in terms of the general system of management of public finance.
Is there anything specific that maybe you would like to just mention that, you know, that's something that you think citizens should be made aware of? Because obviously this is a public hearing, so it's important to get their views. Is there anything in particular?
Well, there are quite a number of provisions that this bill is actually coming with. One of the issues that this bill is coming up with is the question of giving power to Parliament, for starters, the power that is contained within the Constitution, so that Parliament, through its portfolio committee, especially the Budget and Finance, Public Accounts, and other portfolio committees, to ensure that they keep their eye on the ball in terms of how the monies are actually being spent or utilized. The bill also, in a way, stipulates and mandates the various people starting from the Treasurer, the Minister of Finance, and what needs to be done in the budget cycle and also in the expenditure. It also goes to the question of the finance directors in the various ministries and the public entities, the powers and the duties that they are supposed to do. And more significantly, it also lays some penalties. Because I think this is one other issue that many people have been complaining, that a lot of people in government, they just spend money, they do certain things, and yet because they know that there's no punishment that comes to them.
But I think for the first time, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it also involves local authorities. I think that's something that's been missing before, has it not? Unless I can ask Ms. Honourable Chikwama, do you want to take that? I know that.
Yes, this bill also includes the local authority and the provincial councils in politics, which were not there on previous acts.
So putting it simply then, it means that Parliament now would be able to have oversight over the public spending of local authorities, councils, rural authorities, etc., all throughout the whole nation. So you'll be able to then keep an eye on all public expenditure nationwide. That's the bottom line of what the bill is achieving?
Yes, according to Clause 5, now the Parliament have the mandate to oversight even the local authority, even to responsible for oversighting those councils, especially to the expenditure and the revenue, how they use it, which were not mandated previous on the management
bills. Please remember, we want to hear from you, so keep your questions, comments. This is a public hearing. We're just doing it virtually, of course, during the days of COVID-19, and hopefully you're all being safe during this new third wave, which we hope that we avoid here in Zimbabwe. But please, of course, social distancing, sanitizing, etc. So please keep your views coming through. The parliamentarians are here to answer your questions. We also have Honourable Meliswa and Honourable Gandawa on the line, which I'll come to them as well. They're for joining us via Zoom. But Honourable Chikwama, I want to get back to one area which, of course, is very important to Zimbabweans, and that's corruption. I know the government of Zimbabwe has made that one of its top priorities, to fight corruption. So how do you believe that the bill will aid Zimbabwe, and specifically Parliament, in fighting corruption?
I think the bill is also mandate the Parliament to look into issues of revenue, especially on local authority, which was not there previous. They are only for ministries and the government fund. Now that they spread that thing to the local authority, which is at grassroots, so the corruption will be fighted, because the committees are also stated to look into by this bill, to also look after the Audit General's reports, and also to make something to help to cope up with the...
Honourable Maliswa, welcome to the show, to the public hearing. Let me bring you in here, because one thing which was interesting is that we're making this amendment bill, but maybe you could explain to our viewers and to Zimbabwean citizens, I mean, why you believe is necessary, and what's different to this amendment to what's actually currently happening on the ground. Honourable Maliswa? Okay, I think we're still... Is Honourable Gandawa there?
Yes, Andy.
Mehdi, okay, did you hear my question?
I think I did pick up your question. Let me respond to say, I think what's coming out in the new amendments is that element to re-emphasize the need to be looking after our public resources with a bit of efficiency. You would see in Section 8 of the amendment, where there is now the appointment of a director responsible for finance, and that person is defined as a public officer. What that means is we can take that person to task at law, and the act or the proposed amendments are actually putting a huge responsibility on this person in the name of director of finance to say, in any inadequacies in terms of managing the purse, he is directly responsible. Should there be areas or cases where there are inadequacies in terms of managing the national purse, be it revenue that are allocated to that particular ministry, what it then entails is that person is directly accountable, and a surcharge can be applied to him in terms of recoveries of losses that would have been incurred in that particular ministry. So what's happening is we are putting so much emphasis to good corporate governance. We are putting emphasis to managing better the purse that we have, so that we don't have leakages that we've been seeing over the years. This does not only apply to monetary assets, but including state assets as well. This person responsible for the day-to-day financing of a department or unit in a particular ministry is then charged with that responsibility of looking after state assets. I'll just reflect backwards, Andy.
Sure,
you would
please.
notice that, say for instance, over a weekend, you see government vehicles roaming around the streets of Harare or anywhere else in the country. We then say this person who has been appointed as a public officer, what systems have they put in place to ensure that we are safeguarding the assets of the government so that we don't have leakages? So this is what these new amendments are trying to introduce, to say let's not have excesses, let's not have leakages within the government system in terms of the revenues that we have as a country. This is the income that we want to apply and deploy to other areas so that they are productively used, than to let states assume expenses which are not in line with the core objective of a government in day-to-day management.
So, Honourable Gandawa, if I can ask you then, you know, you say that you have these finance officers, they're public officers, finance directors, whatever you'd like to call them in the bill, but what is the timing on that? How does Parliament know that they're getting real time? Does this amendment help them to say, you know what, if that money's spent, we'll know in 3 months, we'll know in 6 months, unlike now where we wait for the Audit General's report for, I think we're looking at the last one was, I think, 2017, 2018, and there's still a lag time behind that. How does this bill help us do real time, so to speak?
I think there are time limits. You would notice that in terms of preparation of regular returns to Parliament for oversight, there is that need and that obligation by the finance director to then present their financials within 60 days from the date of a closing quarter. So that's quite important and key in the sense that should there be misapplication of funds, you quickly pick it up as Parliament before you wait for the Auditor General report, which comes sometimes at the end of the year. So the agents in giving Parliament the reports puts then the public officer in that area or in that space where he needs to discharge his duties day to day in a more efficient manner.
All right. Honourable Maliswa, are you with us? Okay, we're still trying to get Honourable Maliswa back on the phone. Honourable Bramwell Bushu, welcome, sir. I really wanted to ask you about currently Section 11.2 of the PFMA allows the Minister to bring what is termed condonation bill, seeking forgiveness before Parliament, which writes off public resources, advance to funds or other entities if Treasury is of the opinion that the money is irrecoverable. So, will Section 11.2 of the PFMA be amended to allow parliamentary approval before debts are written off? And will Parliament have approval power over any loan agreement signed by the government? I think this is one area that citizens were concerned about.
Thanks, Andy. The issue is that condonation has always been allowed, okay? But it did not have a strict time limit. Now, the Constitution is, because of the provisions of Section 299 and 298, 299, 300, whatever government does in terms of committing public funds has to be approved by Parliament. Now, if the minister is going to write off debt, for instance, that has to come through to Parliament within a given period. Now, the bill is saying within 60 days, okay? But what we want to do is hear from the public whether 60 days is acceptable or not. The issue, or the bottom line really, is at the end of the day, the minister must come to Parliament before or after the loan has been, or after the debt.
What does the amendment say now? It says after.
The amendment is saying 60 days.
After.
After.
So he could have signed the deal and then come to Parliament.
And then come to Parliament for condonation.
So you hear
condonation, basically, the principle of condonation is that he'll be saying, look, this is what we did, right, and please allow us to proceed and for the nation to accept that we have had to write off.
I think Honourable Bush has put it to you there. 60 days, do you agree to that? Do you not agree to that? What do you say? I think this is your hearing. This is a public hearing, so we'd like to hear from you, please. So anything that my guests are saying, please, you can comment on. You can ask questions from them. So please keep coming through. It's very important too. So that isn't how it is now, that 60 days. Was that, because that's in the amendment, right?
That is in the proposed amendment bill.
What was it before? He just had to come within a year, wasn't it?
Yes, the old act just said that the minister could come to Parliament for condonation. Okay. But it did not stipulate that he must come to Parliament. Now it's a provision that he has to do it. In the past, you could decide to come to Parliament or not to come to Parliament. Now, because of the provisions also in Section 119 that Parliament has to oversee a lot of government activities, and the provisions in Section 299 of the Constitution that any revenues and expenditure done by government also has to go through Parliament oversight.
Right.
So this bill seeks at least to give a time frame within which the minister must come to Parliament for condonation when he has done whatever he's done in terms of writing off debt.
Honourable Maliswa, are you back with us? We're still trying to get Honourable Maliswa. So please, if you have any comments coming through, I'm not sure if anyone is with us on the Zoom chat or on the Zoom call. Maybe I could ask, is there submissions out there? I'm not sure if I can. All right, so let's... Please, ma'am, yes.
What Honourable Gandua says, we look into Section 35, which required accounting officer to keep proper records of the account and also submit reports to the accountant general and the audit general within 30 days at the end of each financial year. So it's also a means of controlling the system which was not there, which help our system to all the problems. And Section 84, it provides that the audit committee be established in any ministry, which is another move which
was
help,
not there before.
yes, which also help the Auditor General and the audit system to be strong enough to manage the financial system.
Yeah, but Honourable Mushawiwa, I want to talk. We did touch on this because I heard, you know, what Honourable is saying there about 30 days and so on. But at the same time, though, there must be the penalties. I think this is one of the issues. Now, I want to touch back on that because I think it's something that people have been talking about a lot in general. In fact, even from some of your own meetings, your public hearings I've held. Because if, for example, the public officer doesn't put in his financials in 30 days, or the audit committee doesn't meet, what happens to them? Or is it just sort of like a slap on the wrist? Is there any teeth?
Yeah, the current provision of the law says that the public officer can actually be sanctioned. But I think what has been happening is that the provisions is actually so lenient to the extent that the fines, if any, are so minimal that a person can decide not to do what he is supposed to do because he can get away with murder.
Yes.
But the current setup is, and I'm actually great, the submissions that we've been getting from the people, and is that people really want something that is actually comparing a punishment that can make other public officers not continue to violate the provision of the public finance management.
A deterrent, so to speak.
Yeah, so that's what they want. And one of the things that we also need to highlight, we talked about the local government. It also covers the public entities. You know, your parastatals, your state entities, and the level of corruption that has been happening, and the level of mismanagement that has been happening within our public and the state enterprises requires this law, which we have now, to ensure that those accounting officers, whether you're in the ministry, you're in the local government, you're in the public or state entity, you do things according to the law. If you fail to do that, civil and criminal penalties can be levied against you as an individual.
And that's in the amendment.
In the amendment.
All right, thank you very much, Honourable. Honourable Meliswa, are you back with us? Honourable Meliswa? Shame, he seems to have disappeared. Honourable Mushawiwa, let me come back to you again. You know, how does this amendment make your work, your committee's work, easier? Because obviously you've been operating under the current act, now of course the Amendment Act. How does it make your oversight role as your committee, you know, Public Finance Management Bill HB 421? How does it make your oversight role easier?
The new requirement in this amendment bill is actually very progressive, and in terms of how Parliament can actually sharpen its teeth in terms of the oversight role. You are aware, as you rightly pointed out, that we last got a report from the Accountant General 2018. We are waiting for the 2019 and also the 2020 Auditor General report. But the current provision now mandates all the ministries to submit their quarterly performance to Parliament. After every quarter, they are supposed to present their financial statements, their quarterly reports, which every portfolio committee is supposed to go through. It's now mandatory that you will be seeing in Parliament every ministry, every accounting officer coming before Parliament to answer questions pertaining to what they've now done. What we are trying to do is to catch the ministry, the local government, TIRE, as well as the state enterprises, rather than to wait for posts like what we have actually been doing. But more importantly, apart from the reports coming to Parliament, the new amendments now requires that reports should also now go to the Accountant General. They should also go to the Minister of Finance. They should also go to the Auditor General. So our view is that when reports go to the various organs, Parliament, Auditor General, Accountant General, the Treasury, chances are that we will be in a position to stop any bad behavior or any mismanagement earlier than what we have been doing.
Nice, yeah, because you have to wait sometimes 3-4 years for the Auditor General's report. Honourable Melissa, are you back with us? Okay, we'll try and get him. Unfortunately, he is out of town, so we'll be trying to get him. You're watching this public hearing webinar on the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill HB 4 of 2021, getting all stakeholders involved. And that's Parliament's commitment, and that's why we're sitting here. Brought to you by Zim Papers TV Network, ZTN, the Parliament of Zimbabwe, in partnership with Bold Ads, subsidiary of Zim Papers Private Limited. Remember, this is your public hearing, so we would like to hear from you. So please get involved and keep your questions and comments coming through via the Zoom chat, or please wave or raise your hand if you want to make a contribution, and I will definitely come to you, because as I said, I don't want to hear myself and the Honourable speaking. They want to hear your voice, so please make sure we hear it. Now, Pepekai Chivoe, I hope you're still with us, sir. Pepekai? Mr. Chivoe, are you there? Okay. Well, it appears that there are some issues there. Let me come to you, Honourable Bushu. Oh, Temba. Hello, Honourable Meliswa, are you back? Honourable Meliswa? Hello? All right, Honourable Bushu, let me come to you. I think I want to carry on with what your colleague Honourable was talking about there. It's about stakeholders are calling on government to strengthen the PFMA by providing legal safeguards to the management of public finances. Every year, the Auditor General exposes gross mismanagement of public funds by ministries and government departments, as well as their failure to follow what is stipulated in the PFMA. I think that's another thing, isn't it? Yes. It's also non-compliance with the actual act. And we're, of course, losing millions of dollars in lost revenue, in nefarious actions, corruption, and so forth. You know, and I think this is where this Public Finance Management Bill holistically comes in. Your comments on this?
Well, look, the provisions in the bill are meant to ensure that public funds are managed properly. The whole thing is that in the past, public funds have not been managed properly, and that has come out very clearly in the Auditor General's report. What has also been happening is that there's not been adequate sanctioning of those who either did not comply or those who flouted deliberately provisions of the Public Finance Management Act, so to speak. Now, you can see what has happened now is that in the bill, there's provision for an internal audit, which will be under the Ministry of Finance. While the ministries have got their own auditors, there is also an internal audit that supervises all government activities, which is internal. Okay. Now, that provides for very fast or very quick identification of problem areas. Okay. Now, the provision of the Auditor General's office is still there. And when you look at the bill, it also provides that the Auditor General can actually work with the police, can actually work with the Anti-Corruption Commission, can work with Parliament in order to sanction criminals who would have flouted the Public
and taken our public funds, Act. Basically.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So we've been asking the public to find out what they really want to see in the final act, so that when it is put together, the views of the public in terms of when somebody does or flouts the act, what happens to them. They've been telling us a lot of things. We want to hear from the public today. Or when the Auditor General takes action, goes to SAC, goes to the police, what is the time frame that they expect such matters to be handled? We've also been getting a lot of reaction from that. People want speed, but what is it that they want? And what we want to do is find out from them if these people who flout, or they either steal or do not follow systems, what is it that must happen to them? And the accounting officers, people who are responsible for those public funds, have been given specific responsibilities. And those accounting officers, the bill says, have to sign a performance contract. So also the public is saying, if they are going to sign a performance contract, what is it going to say about them submitting reports, them ensuring that the public funds are being used correctly? So, and basically that is what we want to hear from the public.
In a way, as you're speaking there, in my mind, I thought it's like moving government to private, in the sense that you're making sure that the tenets and good governance that are carried out in the private sector start being applied, particularly in governments, local government authorities. They follow the rules, they follow the act, they follow the bill, and they make sure that everything is done right. You heard Honourable Bushu there. We want to hear from you, please, and your comments. Before I come back into the studio, Honourable Maliswa, are you with us now? Honourable Maliswa? Oh, okay. Honourable Mushawiwa, I want to touch on this, and I'll also. Oh, is that you, Honourable Maliswa? Sorry, this Zoom is a bit of an issue. Mushawiwa, let me come to you, Honourable. Transparency, accountability. I know Parliament. It's one of your. It's obviously something that's very top of the agenda of most members of Parliament, being accountable and transparent to the citizens that voted you in. How does this help Parliament do this?
Let me start by saying that government, local authorities and state entities, they are trillion-dollar businesses. Maybe members, people need to know that the amount of money that is handled by the government is more than the money that is handled by Econet, by Delta, or any other company that you can think of. These are trillions of dollars. It's a trillion business. And one of the major challenges that we have faced over the years is that we have not paid attention to detail. And we had allowed mediocrity to happen. And this is the reason why the amendment bill seeks to ensure that the directors of finance, the accounting officers, take personal responsibility in terms of the transparent and accountability. And remember, we as Parliament, we represent the interests of all the people in the country. People want to see their standard of living, and that can only happen if the people that are enshrined to manage the public fiscus are doing it in a proper way. We want to move away from the laissez-faire approach or attitude that has actually happened over the years. We are simply saying, if Econet, if Delta is performing, we also need to be saying to the finance director in any ministry, this is a very important job, and you need to account to do things in a transparent manner. If you are not performing, the system should be there to ensure that non-performers are removed, and those that are stealing funds go to jail, just like you find in other private companies. And that's what we are trying to do. We try to instill this professionalism within the government, the three tiers of government.
Honourable Chikwama, let me bring you in there. Similar question: transparency and accountability. I mean, it's critical in Parliament's actions, isn't it? And I think this bill apparently will give you some teeth to be able to do that.
Yes, the bill will give us some teeth to do that, especially when it comes to the committees who are looking the report from the auditors, and so that they will manage to make the financial management act to work. When oversighting, we oversee how the money were used, how the money were collected, and now Parliament have to deal with those issues.
Thank you, Honourable. Honourable Maliswa, are you with us? I really did want to get your views. Anyway, Mr. Chivore, are you there with us? Honourable Gandawa, I hope you are there.
Yes, we are here. We've just connected. We had lost signal and lost sound from studio. So I think we have lost a bit in terms of the flow of the discussion, but we can go ahead.
I'm here.
Oh,
Andy, I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here.
Okay. Honourable Maliswa.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Honourable Maliswa, then let me come to you then. I hope you've been following the discussion because we've covered quite a lot here. And also, really, because this is a public hearing, I'll be really interested to know your views on what you would, specifically you would like the public to know about this amendment and also what you think that they should comment on. Let me turn it over to you.
First of all, the public must know that they're the ones that make the laws, not us. And it's an opportunity for them to make laws for the good governance of the country. And when we're in parliament as parliamentarians, we uphold the law. They make the law, we uphold the law. So it is important that they participate in such issues. That is the reason why we've been having problems. And we as parliament are accused of passing certain laws when clearly we are upholding the very same laws that they make. For example, amendment number 2. Like you have a situation where in the Constitution, there is no clause, provision that talks about any law.
Honourable Maliswa? Yeah, I think he's in Norton, so I'm sure there must be connectivity problems out there.
20 years. It was such a provision. You hear me? You hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now I hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so it is important that they make laws that are for the good governance. There are a lot of issues which are important in this one. Accountability, the borrowing powers of the minister. Where should it rest with Parliament or the minister? Should the minister seek condonation after borrowing, or he must first of all get government, the parliamentary approval? Because we have been elected by the people to be the ears and eyes of the people. And it is important that we don't have ministers borrowing, then coming to Parliament for condonation. It's either they come to Parliament first, then they're given the go-ahead to borrow, then they report back to Parliament, not as and when they feel like it, but that quarterly aspect. It's important so that we understand public funds, how do we want them accounted for periodically? Others were suggesting 21 days. We must know what has happened to public funds and so forth. These are some of the issues. During elections, when Parliament is dissolved, the 20 days, the president has powers to borrow and money. Where should the powers lie? How much should they borrow for what? Who looks at this? Should the Auditor General's office, the Accountant and General Office be involved and consulted by the president before he borrows? Because politicians do not be in place, permanent secretaries are there. So what sort of team is required to be able to be consulted by the president before he does borrow? And that very same team then comes and reports back to the new parliament on what that money was meant for and so forth. So all these are areas which I think the public needs to chip in. And again, those who have not done well in terms of governance issues, transparency, accountability, what do we do with them? Corruption is there, catch and release, how do we do with that? So it's an opportunity for the public. After seeing that catch and release seems to be the order of the day, what do they intend to do? The person who's being in corruption, who's taken or who's stolen money, do they give back the money, then go to jail or what? All these are issues which the public needs to come up with and tell us what we must do with such people so that we zero in on corruption. Because for as long as the pot is leaking, we are not going anywhere. So they must bring up the laws and say, this is what, for example, one must give back everything. They must go minimum 10 years in prison, no bail, no amnesty. These are things must come from the public. Once they become law, then no one touches. Again, the person who was involved in corruption too must also be prosecuted at the end of it, because it's a two-way, it's a three-way system. And equally, should they be blacklisted or not, so that they don't participate in government tenders and they don't work. That's the opportunity for the public to now come with that so that we're able to be strong on the accounting and transparency of public funds.
I think let me echo there what Honourable Maliswa and also my other honourable guests in the studio have been saying. We want to hear from you. So please, your views, your comments, let them keep coming through via either the Zoom chat. I'm sure there's still opportunity for you to even write to Parliament or email Parliament now, because remember, the physical hearings are all done. They ran from the 7th to the 11th of June. This will be your last opportunity here on this virtual public hearing for you to express your views. So it's very important that you do that. Honourable Gandawa, I'm going to ask you an interesting question, which I think I picked up from one of our viewers earlier. You know, when you put all of the local authorities, the rural district councils, you put parastatals, you also put government ministries and departments into the mix, does Parliament have the capacity to be able to siphon through all that information and really boil it down to pick out all the malfeasance that's happening? Honourable Gandawa?
Thank you, Andy. I think what's important is to make laws which are watertight and to be able to come up with laws that structure an institution in such a way that should prevent the financial misgivings that we've been having over the years. You would notice that I wouldn't want to agree certainly to say there will be so much in the hands of Parliament in terms of oversight to have a look at local authorities, quasi-government institutions. What we want are institutions that work. And for those institutions to work, there must be proper laws. So if we streamline our laws in such a way that they are very effective in terms of their application, it means what then gets down to central government and other tiers of government also becomes a very, very, very watertight system in terms of managing and administration of funds. What has been happening is because there was no law that was compelling council to act in a certain way, people will then just do and act in a manner that they feel and think is right. But because the law is now saying, let's take action against people who misuse state funds, let's take action on people that get to spend unauthorized expenditure, instance of irregular expenditure, wastefulness in government must come to a point where we say, let's put a stop. Let me write between what Honorable Maliswa said. We must get to a point where we say, what is the kind of penalty you are putting for people that are busy stealing from local government, people that are stealing from all tiers of government? If we have that system and an institution which is so strong in terms of, which is supported by law, then I don't think it would be very heavy on Parliament to have oversight in terms of all the other government arms that we are going to be looking at in terms of our oversight as members of Parliament.
That's right. I want to bring in Mr. Chivore. I hope he's with us. Pepekai Chivore, are you with us, sir?
I'm here, Auntie.
Oh,
I'm here.
oh, brilliant. Welcome. I've been trying to get you on all show. Pepekai, one thing that struck me, and I think even a comment came through, was that if you put in all of these parastatals, I believe there's over 400 parastatals, you look at all the government ministries and government departments, you look at the local authorities and rural authorities, I mean, that's a lot of information that's streaming into Parliament. I mean, how can you ensure that Parliament isn't, overrun with too much information, so to speak, that you can't find the wood from the trees?
Thank you, Andy. Just like what Honorable Gandawa has said, it's not everything that comes to Parliament. We have structured a way of receiving reports from all those government departments, ministries, departments, and agents. So what we are looking for is when they get public funds, or when they use public funds, they should report on the use of those public funds, what they've used the funds for, whether they've used it for the intended purpose, and the outcomes they have achieved after using public funds. That's the information that we want. So the rest of the information will not be useful to Parliament. So Parliament has specific information that they will be looking at. So it's not much in terms of information that comes to Parliament, because we have a structured way of receiving that information.
Right.
And the Parliament also has experts in various departments to analyze and scrutinize that information to make sure that we make sense out of that information. So once we have those systems working, we will ensure that there are preventative mechanisms to make sure that local authorities, ministries, government agencies, and other departments will act and work in a certain way, fully aware that they are supposed to send certain information to Parliament. But what is currently obtaining such that our local authorities have not been sending their reports to Parliament. Our ministries, our departments are late in terms of sending their information even to the Auditor General for audit. So once we have those systems working, you realize that it will act as a deterrent on potential abusers of government resources, because they know they are supposed to report on the use of resources as well as on the performance information related to the outcomes they would have achieved having used or having expended public resources.
You're watching the public
Andy,
hearing.
can I just come in?
Of course. Please go ahead.
One of the issues which is critical is compliance and enforcement. Compliance and enforcement. There's no enforcement, there's no compliance. And we are known to be a nation which writes well. Even our laws are good. When it comes to compliance, it's not there. Enforcement is not there. So equally, the Public Finance Management Act must come with laws of those who are not complying and those who are not enforcing. And what basically we're saying, any public officer who does not comply or enforce, a minimum people suggested, for example, a year in prison. Any institution that does not comply with the Auditor General's recommendation must equally face a prison term, but also not be given money from the fiscals. Because if you're not accounting, if you're not reporting, like Chigore said about them reporting to Parliament, they've not been reporting to Parliament, but it's there in the Public Financial Management Act. So basically, if you don't report accordingly, you then don't get money. And members of Parliament must be told lawfully in certain terms, and it must be a law, not one which allows people to be whipped and so forth, 2/3. We don't need that. It must be a law coming from the people that any institution that does not comply with giving reports quarterly to Parliament will not be given any money. It's as simple as that. Not only that, those who are chief accounting officers too, who will go to prison, then we know the country. Because once again, them not complying and enforcing, it's a waste of taxpayers' money. They're being paid to do all this work. So institutions like Honorable Gandawa said, like Pepe said, are critical in this, and they must be seen to be working and implementing. And there's no talk. If you don't, there is a sentence for you. Go and rest in prison because you've been wasting taxpayers' money. It's time the people act. It's the time people come with these laws.
Thank you, Honourable Chikwama. I'll come to you just for your information. Honourable Meliswa was saying there that the public are saying very strongly they want people to go to jail for non-compliance with some of these acts. Honourable Chikwama, you are on all of these committees. Please go ahead.
I just wanted to add on the Section 84, which was provided by this bill, to have audit committees to be established in ministries, statutory funds, constitutional entities. As you know, it will be make the ministry work, and even the audit. They internally they will know the position. Some of the entities, they are not yet even submitted their books for audit for 5 years. Some they have even 8 years. Now that there is a committee which will be there, it will ease the work of the Audit General, so that the committee will be answerable for not bringing their books of accounts and even their books of account to be audited. So it will be assist even the Parliament.
Yeah, but if I can, oh yes, sir. And while you comment on that, those institutions or entities that haven't submitted audit reports going back, as you said, for 5-6 years, do they have to catch up? Is this all covered as well? And maybe you could then comment on what you wanted to add.
Yeah, they have to catch up. In fact, one of the things that we do have is that I think you may be aware, we do have a financial adjustment bill that is actually before Parliament, pertaining to the condonation that happened 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that level of indiscipline is something that needs to be kept by this bill. One of the major issues that we need to do, and which I'm glad part of it is actually factored in the bill. Honorable Chikwama talks of the Central Internal Audit Unit, now under the Ministry of Finance. You now have also the Auditor General being the external auditor. You also have Parliament. Part of these measures is to ensure that everything is checked for transparency and also accountability. Our view as Parliament is that in spite of the fact that we have got a number of state enterprises, local authorities and ministries, I think Parliament will be in a position to perform the work in terms of the oversight role. Why is that so? It's because, like Honorable Mlitswa talked about, if we've got tight laws, first and foremost, we check on the compliance. Are people complying with the requirements of the law? Secondly, we also then get the reports from the internal audit units that are now being housed by the Treasury. What we now have is a situation where the Ministry of Finance, an internal auditor in the Ministry of Transport, will now be reporting direct to the Treasury. And those reports will also be getting them as a portfolio committees of Parliament, and will be in a position to check and monitor progress as things go by. And tied to that is our quarterly reports that we will also be getting. So this bill, in a way, allows portfolio committees to work extra hard in terms of making sure that every ended government parastatal that falls within a portfolio committee, we should actually diarize in terms of making sure that they do this, they give us their reports on such a date. And failure to do that, we also want, and judging from the comments by the public, people really want the government to set an example. They want to see a finance director, they want to see a permanent secretary being jailed for having crossed the line of failing to comply with the laws of the country.
I want to carry on with that same thought, Honourable Bushu. Let's look at parastatals, for example. Okay, we've talked about PSs as Honourable Mushoviwa there said, PSs and so forth be accountable and possibly go to jail. Parastatals. Now, you can tell parastatals to put in place their audited accounts and so on and so forth, but they also have boards of directors, they have management and so on. How accountable is the whole team in the parastatal if they don't comply with the public finance management, the bill in its totality? Because it's an interesting question, isn't it?
It is an interesting question. The moment the bill is passed, it becomes law. Simple. Okay? Now, because parastatals are set up from public funds, whatever they will be doing will be managing public funds. So for that reason, Parliament has to have an interest on how the public funds are being managed. We may come up with, the how bit later on, but the whole idea is parastatals must then, either through the various supervising ministries or directly, must report to Parliament as to how they are using public funds. Because the provisions of sections 298 and 299 are very simple. If you are managing public funds, you are accountable to Parliament. Now, you are saying the parastatals have got boards.
They've got boards, they've got management.
They've got management.
All approved by government, I would assume, or the relevant ministries.
Yes, but you see, we've in the process of checking or doing our oversight, we've also found out that there are some parastatals that have not been behaving properly. The parastatals that have been misusing public funds, parastatals that have not been managing those public funds well. Parliament must have access to that information. Parliament must be able to censure those who are unable to do so. If a board is not performing, you know, a parastatal board is not performing, Parliament must be able to say that parastatal board is not performing. It must get
now
out.
That's not covered here, because under this amendment bill, we're looking more at public officers, the finance directors of each group. But we're not really looking at the more corporate governance side of it.
Well, it is covering everything, and
okay.
It's covering everything. Whoever is handling public funds.
Whoever is accountable.
And whoever is appointed as an as an accounting officer. In this instance, if a parastatal is set up, the CEO of that parastatal becomes the accounting officer.
Right.
And he is answerable to the relevant ministry and to Parliament because he's handling public funds.
So
and
his board must also be ensured that the public officer who's the CEO must toe the line.
We are not saying the board is not going to exercise its responsibilities, no. But we are saying both the board and management are handling public funds. But within that setup, within that structure, there's somebody who is the accounting officer. Yeah. That accounting officer must demonstrate that the public funds are being handled transparently, they are being handled carefully, they are being handled in the manner prescribed by the Public Finance Management Act. The Public Finance Management Act this time is covering all areas where public funds are being managed. In the past, the PFMA did not cover all areas. Now, in this instance, it has been found out that it would be a good thing if the country is going to manage its public funds, and Parliament, since it was given oversight over those public funds, anyone who is handling public funds must at some point report to Parliament.
The bottom line is, if we spend our public funds responsibly, it means it leaves more money for spending on social services, on other issues, and so on. Yes. Honourable Maliswa and Gandawa, I will come to you, but I just wanted Honourable Moshoviwa to just make a comment here.
Yeah, I wanted to say that the Public Finance Management Act should also be read in conjunction with the Constitution of this country. It should also be read together with the Corporate Governance Act. There is no one who is being spared. From the board of directors of parastatals, public entities, even when you look at the council, local council, even the councillors, because they are also a board of directors in a way, even the ministers, everyone along the way is actually affected by the Public Finance Management Act. The behavior, conduct. If you check the Public Finance Management Bill, there's because it's actually critical, especially now, where we've actually had the ministers giving directive to accounting officers to do things which are against the law. Everyone now is being affected. Right. So whichever way you look into it, if we do this proper, both the Public Finance Management Bill is actually progressive, because we are saying everyone should actually focus, help in terms of ensuring that there's a transparency, there's accountability in the manner that we manage our public finance. So everyone is affected.
Everyone's affected. I would like to hear from you. So if there's anyone who's on the line now who would like to make a comment, please, if you could go ahead. I'll just pause a little bit and see if you would like to come in. Is there anyone out there from Zimbabwe who would like to make comments on this Public Finance Management Amendment Bill? It's the problem with Zoom. It's hard to... All right. Okay, while we're waiting for... Yes? Yes?
I just want to say, if everybody is involved, as Honourable mentioned it, you see when new section which was created, section 35, required the accounting officers to keep proper records of accounts and submit reports or statement to the Audit General and the accountant. So all those people in the local authority, whatever, in parastatal, whenever they are reporting that the system is improving and the system will be better, because they will know the position of each organization, so that the Audit General or the Accounting General will report it to Parliament. It's in the Parliament to to do their oversight through this section.
Those sections, yeah. No, I know it's unusual. We are having a virtual public hearing here, webinar, particularly this, but this is a very important topic, as you can hear from the members of Parliament in studio and on the virtual call. Really looking at the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill HB 4 2021. So please make sure we hear from you. This is your last chance. The physical hearings have been held from the 7th to 11th of June. They've already happened. This is the last opportunity for you to make any comments or contributions. So I am calling for anybody out there, any Zimbabwean or any citizen, any comment or question you'd like to have. But please, can you do so now? All right. Okay. Well, we'll try and sort that out. Honourable Maliswa, wait, let me come to you, Honourable Gandawa, and I'll come to you, Honourable Maliswa, after that. Honourable Gandawa, I really want to just batten down this issue of accountability, because it's obvious that parastatals, local authorities, and I think Honourable Musaviwa said it very well in studio, they all have boards, they've got councillors and so on. It's important that the buck doesn't stop at one person, isn't it? And that everybody in the hierarchy or the corporate governance chain is accountable, Honourable Gandawa.
Thank you, Andy. I think I would like to put it across and say these amendments are quite progressive. Let me just quote section 81, amendment number 29, to just demonstrate the extent to which the new rules or the new regulations are coming into effect, to the extent that they affect virtually everyone within the scope of government. If you look at that amendment, it speaks to the Public Service Commission in terms of management of funds from government, the commander of the branch of defense forces concerned, irrespective of which area they come from, as long as they're in the defense forces, the Commissioner General of Police in all their disbursements, the Commissioner of Prisons, the Attorney General's office. So no one is left out to say this particular office will not be affected by the new amendments that are coming up. I think what the amendments speak to is an environment or a world where everyone is becoming accountable to the public, where public officers are there to respond to what the needs of our population are like, so that going forward, we have that manner and behavior public officers should demonstrate to preserve the little resources that we have as a state, so that institutions do not become wasteful. The remainder of the money that we have, where we apply our funds productively, is then applied to social services. It's then applied to our roads, to our bridges, to our dams, for the good development of our own citizens. What has been happening is the wastefulness has been coming in virtually all the areas of government. So the progressive nature of these amendments that we are seeing today are saying everyone must be accountable, everyone must be responsible. Let's work for the good cause of our country. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you. Honourable Maliswa, progressive. You heard Honourable Gandawa there. These are progressive amendments that will bring management of public finances more in line and obviously benefit the economy. Your comment?
Thank you very much for that. Let me say that in Shona they say at Fanuki campaign I will not do that. First of all, the executive powers have got to be curtailed. You brought up a very important point, Andy, when you spoke about parastatals. First of all, who do they report to? In South Africa, they report to Parliament. Parliament has power. In this country, they report to the minister. Even the independent commissions report to the minister. So once the minister is involved, no matter what recommendations happen, he has the final say to the parastatal or to the commission to say, don't do this. Now we need to come up with a law that will make these ministers also feel the pinch that if any parastatal under them, if any commission under them does not comply, they're the number one person to go for, because you've got to understand that the thing back stops with the head of the department. The ministers must not hide behind being politicians and allow the technocrats. Their job is that the bosses at the end of the day, and they must know that if there's any anomaly, maladministration, misappropriation of funds, they have to report. And this is where abuse of office comes in, negligence also comes in that aspect. So Honorable Mshoriwa spoke about the Corporate Government Act, which is important. And for us, it was important that when we were doing it, to make sure that there is no parastatal that reports to any minister. So it is important. And like Honorable Gandawa said, that we must come up with laws, and this is where the people must come in and say, don't allow these ministers to get away with murder. We want to know that anybody holding public office, even if you're on your farm, if you fail to discharge your duties accordingly, the law is following you. And then anybody conducting themselves in that office will know that at the end of the day, they go to jail on their own. And when they're on duty, especially involving public funds, they must understand that they are equally accountable. So a law must come in, and it's a very good point. I don't see any law coming, honorable members, here, which implicates the ministers, deputy ministers, permanent secretary, board members, and so forth. If the entire cartel is to go because the decision that they made was really from a cartel point of view, no one must be spared. So the people must come with the law so that they protect their money. And again, one of the critical issues which came up in these public hearings was people want to know, when we go out for public hearings to tell them about the budget, about the laws, why don't we go back to them to tell them about the expenditure of the public funds? And they've opted and they've proposed that it must start at what level? It must start at what level? Because government must be decentralized, there's devolution, there are structures there, parliament must be there. And people said, you parliamentarians, we vote for you to be in power. Why did you come back to us with these reports? So that, because we trust you. And I really was humbled when people said that, because we're not there by choice. And we are there because we've been elected by you, the people, including yourself, Andy, for us to carry out the mandate of oversight. So we cannot transfer our power to certain people, to certain institutions. Parliament, too, must be able to have powers. It curtails people because it's representing people. It also represents people and reports to the people from ward level to constituency level to district level to provincial level, using the state institutions which are there, the civil servants which are there. The Minister of Finance must be there to talk about the budget, talk about how much they want and how much they spent. And this must be done periodically. Quarterly, they go back to the people, and the people are well informed about how government expenditure is being used at the end of the day.
Thank you. Honorable Bush, interesting there what Temba Moliso was saying. He was saying that, you know, the public, in these public hearings, I believe the public was saying to you as parliamentarians, why are you not coming back to us with reports on how you spent our money? Because you may come and do maybe budget and ask us about budgets and so forth, but how about expenditures? You should come back. We trust you as parliamentarians. You represent us, the people. We voted for you. So why are you not coming back to us and telling us about expenditure rather than passing it over to a ministry and saying, well, the ministry is responsible for that? It's an interesting point.
Yes. Let me start with something, Andy, a bit different, and I'll go into this. The responses from the public were very good. But today you've been inviting the public to come and participate with us. But I would like to encourage them to maybe even write to clerk at parsim.gov.zw. Maybe they are enjoying watching us discussing this, but I would like to get back to what you asked me. This bill is meant to be progressive, and this bill is coming out of a constitution that was approved by the public in 2013. And this bill is only one of the many that are being aligned to the Constitution. The Constitution is a people's constitution. And what we are saying is, we've heard them, okay? And when the bill is now being debated in Parliament, as their representatives, we'll also allow for the provision of feedback on revenues and expenditures at the end of each financial year. But as you know, as you have, as the public has noticed, this bill provided for Parliament or the minister to ensure that Parliament goes to the public to talk about the budget. And then the public is saying, yeah, okay, you come here and you consult us on the budget. Why don't you also just give us feedback on how you have performed against that budget, which is normal. And I think it's a fair request. It's something that is that should be considered. And as we debate the bill in Parliament, that will be looked at. We will also consider that. Yeah, if we take that into account, it means that we are communicating both backwards and forwards. And that is basically what the Constitution is saying. Communicate. And if the people say so, we should consider it.
Now, we are coming to the end. We finished at 12. But however, I just have two more, just a final question or a couple of questions. Honourable Mushawiwa, an interesting point came through. I've just got a comment here in my ear. So talking about the composition and appointment of boards, because we've been talking about this accounting officer, the chief accounting officer for an institution, whether it be a parastatal or it be a government department or it be a local authority. However, it seems that ministers or the ministries have a lot of power in appointing boards of some parastatals, and the quality or the qualifications of those boards. And is that something the public has hinted? Because one of the comments here is that Parliament should have oversight over the boards and approve the board selection rather than leaving it to a ministry or to an individual. Your comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. And just probably the area question pertaining to the report back. For the first time this year in 2020, last year we went around asking people pertaining to the budget, pre-budget consultations. This year we've now gone to the very same centers doing a post-budget report back, telling the people to say, you said this, and this is what is the minister came up with. And we explaining the gaps that are there. Then coming to the issue of the boards, you are very correct in that one of the worst crises that we face in this country is that whenever a new minister comes in, he or she wants to set new board members for the various entities. And I think Honorable Muliswa had actually put it correctly to simply say the normal and the proper system is to have these boards accountable to Parliament rather than to ministers, so that at least they vote the tenure of office, but also they are supposed to then perform their duty well. The current provision of the Constitution, statutory things that has to be adhered to when the ministers have to appoint the board. One of it is actually to do with merit. The second one is also to make sure that there's a regional balance in terms of the board representation. And the last one and more important is also the gender equality to ensure that we've got a 50-50 gender representation on the board. But what we have seen is that we've done well when it comes to the regional representation. We've done fairly well in terms of gender balance. But where we have actually been found wanting is actually on the merit. To say, do the people that are there, do they qualify to be superintending? Like for instance, you put it ZESA, you put it petrol trade. Does the board have the capacity to then superintend? And bear in mind, the board is supposed to supervise the accounting officer, the chief executive, who possibly is well qualified. It goes even to the current challenge that we face even in local government, where we've got a town clerk, well educated, reporting to possibly councillors who possibly have got grade 7 or form 4. You know, it creates a problem. So we need to ensure that we increase on the question of the merit, to say the people that are appointed to the board should actually be people that have got the requisite qualification, experience, to make sure that they can actually watch what the executive is doing.
I think that's a good point. And thank you for that comment, by the way. I think it's something that people are aware of. We have come to the end of the public hearing webinar on the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill HB 4 2021, getting all stakeholders involved. But before I say goodbye, I'd like to call upon Honourable Chikwama just to give us some closing comments. Ma'am?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to thank this platform we have. We managed to highlight our things very well, and also although the people are not joining us, it is important for the people to join us so that they will lay their views so that we make some other changes wherever they are talking.
But they still can, can't they? They can still contact Parliament.
Yes. Hello.
Sorry, yes, hello?
Yeah, I just wanted to have one last comment before.
Okay, fine. Let the Honourable Chikwama finish, please.
Okay. It's only what I want to say that
people should get involved.
People must involve.
People must get involved.
So that they will give us their views. Only public hearings, it's only the people who are supposed to give us their views about the bill we have on hand, so that they will make their contribution, which will assist the Parliament to make some adjustment or to add whatever they will discuss.
Very good. Please get involved. Honourable Gandawa, you wanted to say something, did you?
It was sure, I suppose. Let me give you the opportunity to speak.
Okay. Pepukai?
Yes. Thank you, NT. I just wanted to encourage people to really read around and look for information, share information as much as possible. The same way we share information on WhatsApp, for example, SA 127 was shared widely. Let's share. Government has released the 2021 first quarter budget performance on the Ministry of Finance website there. Let's share that information. Let's analyze. Let's be involved. Government has also shared the 2020 budget performance on the Ministry of Finance website. Let's share that information. Let's be involved. Both people are saying we are not getting information, but it's available, but we need to share it. Then let's also try to look for other international best practices so that we incorporate them into the Public Finance Management Act, which is being reviewed now. So if you look at countries like Uganda, in Uganda, you don't get the next quarterly release of the budget unless you satisfy all the conditions regarding reporting and satisfying Parliament that you have used the resources for the intended purpose. So let's incorporate all those in the practice. Let's see how we can strengthen our public finance management with a view to make sure that the sanctions that are in Section 91 of the PFMA are actualized and come live, because there are sanctions with regarding the performance of the heads of ministries or accounting officers. Any accounting officer or head of any parastatal who doesn't perform as expected, there's sanctions that are clear on Section 91, but we need to see people going behind bars for action that is contrary to what is expected of them. Thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you. I think on that note...
Can I just say something?
Yes, you may, sir. Go ahead.
The independent members mzukuru wewe sema party saka musangano nopedzwa nene mzukuru. So what is important, Andy? What is important is may these reports be in the 16 languages as enshrined in the Constitution. We are shortchanging people. The Bible is well known because it is in every language. Why are we not producing that? The government is being smart because there are people in the rural areas, our grandmothers, our aunties, our sekurus, who can only read Shona, Ndebele, Tonga. Why are we not providing that as enshrined in the Constitution? Why are we not proud of our languages? So because of that, people will never know what is happening. And in a way, we are shortchanging people. It's unconstitutional. And I spoke to the speaker about the Constitution being in 16 languages. He told me it had been done. But none of the members have it in the 16 languages. So if we don't have that when we represent people, what about the ordinary person? Even all these bills must be in the different languages where we go with people who can translate in the languages that suits the people. Let us represent the people honestly. And lastly, may the executive not be in the tendency of bullying the Parliament when it reports to Parliament. May it comply with parliamentary portfolio committee recommendations as well. And if they don't do that, we must not approve their budgets. Once again, You've got good members of Parliament, but lastly, 129 1K hurts my fellow colleague members of Parliament. I hope it can be removed from the Constitution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Maliswa. I think on that note, we have to come to the end of the programme this morning. However, it's very clear that the Parliament of Zimbabwe is committed to getting you the stakeholder involved, whether they do it through their going to their specific constituencies or whether you need to write to them or get involved. They're actually here, and we've done many shows and we'll continue to do many shows at Parliament of Zimbabwe as they reach out to you, the citizens. But as Honorable Chikwama said, you need to also get involved in the process. You can't just be silent. Let your voice be heard and also come to Parliament and advise them and recommend to them what you believe should be in laws, what should be in the amendment, and so on. Well, that's it for today. This webinar was brought to you by Zimpaper's TV network ZTN, the Parliament of Zimbabwe, in partnership with Bold Ads, a subsidiary of Zimpaper's Private Limited. I'd like to heartily thank our guests this morning, and I had a whole group of honourables today. As Honourable Bramwell Bushu, member of the Public Accounts Committee. Thank you, Bramwell. Honourable Bertha Chikwama, member of the Public Accounts Committee as well. Thank you. Honourable Temba Muliswa, member of the Public Accounts Committee. Honourable Edwin Mushoriwa, he's here in studio with me, member of the Budget, Finance and Economic Development Committee. Honourable Ability M. Gandawa, he's also from the Budget, Finance and Economic Development Committee. Thank you, gentlemen. And last but not least, Pepukai Chivore, Director in the Zimbabwe Parliament's Budget Opposite. I really thank you very much for coming on to this very interesting discussion that we've had this morning. Well, that's it from me. I'm Andy Hodges, and thank you so much for participating in this virtual public hearing. Goodbye, and please, you all be safe.